welcome to the program, Judge Jim Gray. Jim, thanks for coming on with us.
Well, Kyle, it's nice to be with you. I enjoy these sorts of things. I love to discuss issues, and I'm very, very excited about running for office with Governor Gary Johnson, whom I have commented publicly, and I mean it, is the most qualified person to be president of the United States that I know of. So I'm excited to be running with him.
Absolutely, and I'll just jump right into the questions with that. My first question is, what sets the Johnson-Gray ticket apart from the Obama ticket and the Romney ticket? What makes it essential that people vote for you? What are you guys going to do once you get in there?
Well, that's 4 questions, Kyle. I'm in the legal business, so that's a compound question, and I'll answer it anyway. The biggest difference between Johnson and Gray on the one hand and Obama and Biden or Romney and whomever is Johnson and Gray. Governor Johnson is beholden to no one other than doing the right thing for the right reason. He will represent the people of the United States, not only by what he says, but what he actually did as a 8-year governor in New Mexico. Let me just tell you what happened when he asked me to be his running mate, which I was really flattered about. And number one, my response was, I'll only do this on one condition, and that is that we run to win, and that's exactly what he's doing too. And then he told me something I've never heard of in a political race before. Jim, if your ideas are different than mine, feel free to discuss them publicly. You know, that shows he has no ego. He wants to do the right thing for the right reason, and we need to get accurate information and the best plans, regardless of who comes up with them. So you ask what's the difference between the Johnson-Gray administration and one with Romney or Obama. You know, we are not Republicans and we are not Democrats, because today they are so polarized. We embrace good ideas and we don't care who gets the credit. If a Republican comes up with a good idea, the Democratic Congress will try to squelch it, and vice versa if a Democrat comes up with a good idea. However, we will have people in our administration from all political parties. We will embrace good ideas, unlike the Republican or the Democrat. There's more, but that's the basis.
And, you know, right there, I really like that, because a lot of a big problem that a lot of my listeners and I have, too, with the political parties is some people get so aligned with I'm either a Republican or a Democrat that they don't even see the real issues anymore. They start to only see what their party says about the issues. And I've even seen some political candidates, I won't mention anybody in particular, who they will change their opinions, and that's something that you guys really haven't done.
No, you know, it so happened that I wrote a book back in 2010 on pretty much all of these issues. It's called A Voters Handbook, Effective Solutions to America's Problems. And I wasn't looking to be in a political campaign. This is just what I believe. As a judge for 25 years, a former federal prosecutor, a Navy JAG attorney, Peace Corps volunteer, you know, just perceptive, trying to discuss issues. It just so happens that Governor Johnson's ideas and mine are very similar. They pretty much work. So you can tell what Governor Johnson believes. Go to our website, GaryJohnson2012.com. I mean, it's there. And if you can agree with us or disagree with us, but at least you'll know what our beliefs are. Having said that, as a judge, when people would waive jury and just try their case before me alone, which actually happened quite a bit, at the end of the presentation of evidence and before the arguments of counsel, I would simply give my tentative views. You know, this is where I'm leaning. This is what I believe the evidence is and what the law applies to it. And if a plaintiff was going to be successful, how much money that they would recover, and this is why, and I believe that person and didn't believe that one. And then take your best shot. And if I'm wrong, I'll change my mind. And that's the way I would approach the government. That's the way Governor Johnson approaches the government. I don't have an ego either. I just want to help our country in these times of true crisis and true need. The government is part of the problem, and we will be a part of that solution.
So
our economy is in such trouble, and it won't matter whether it's Obama or Romney. It will matter if it's Governor Johnson. Our children are being failed by our schools. It won't make any difference between Obama or Romney. Governor Johnson and I will achieve excellence in our schools within the next 4 years. And with regard to jobs, it's exactly the same thing. We will employ an institutional change in our country that will literally bring thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs back to the United States of America. And there's not a nickel worth of difference between Obama and Romney on that subject, or most anyone other one either.
Okay, well, the one thing that I want to mention first is you mentioned education reform, and you have a lot of experience in education. I was reading about the things that you did with the peer judicial system for minors. So what would be some of the things that you would do? What would you implement as vice president in the Johnson-Gray administration to reform education? What plans do you have to get education back on track in this country?
Well, thank you for mentioning our peer court program, and I'm very proud of it, and it's ongoing here, and we are in 13 different high schools in Orange County, California, where I'm from. But that's a different issue because I will answer the question you asked by what would I do as vice president, Governor Johnson do as president, and I would ask one question, and the answer will dictate where our country should go. Who is in a better position to decide where and how a student should be educated, their parents or the government? And for me, that is a very easy question to answer. The parents are much better suited. So we get the federal government out of education. Today, we're having a huge problem because the federal government has a whole bunch of money. They keep a part of it for their own administration and whatever and give it to the states, and then the states do the same thing, eventually give it to the school districts. The school district keep a bunch and put strings attached to it, and then they actually give some to the schools, and only at the end do we actually have the money provided to the teachers. And by that time, there's so many strings or wires or cables attached to it, the teachers can't teach. What we need to do instead, an institutional change, is provide the parents with the ability to decide where their education dollar is going to be spent. So they can take this, they can go to the Kyle Phillips school. And if you're not doing well, Kyle, what are they going to do? They're going to go to the neighboring school, a different school. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to start saying, my goodness, why are all these people leaving my school? What are they doing that I'm not? And you will change. You will get better. You will use a great deal more of the ability to teach well and go through that. If you don't, you'll go out of business, or somebody else will come in and take it over. That's exactly what we need. We need competition in our schools. When we get that, we will again have excellence, and we will bring that competitive system back to the schools by allowing the parents to choose where their children would be educated. And by the way, if you're a good teacher, you're going to be in really good shape because you're going to be in demand. You will make more money. You will be able to teach the way you want to teach. If it works, the parents will love you. And if it doesn't work, you can look for a job somewhere else. It's the poor teachers that have the vested interest in the perpetuation of this completely failed system. We will change it.
So you essentially want to make the education system similar to the system with any other business in this country, where if you don't provide a product that's good enough for people to come to you, well, as simple as that, people are going to go somewhere else and get the product that they need.
Precisely. It's just demonstrable. The shoes that you are now wearing, I can see right through this telephone line that you're wearing a nice pair of shoes. You bought those at the price you wanted to spend, and you got the shoes you want. That's not true with regard to education. It's true with regard to almost every other consumer good. That's what we should have with regard to education as well. Parents will demand excellence, and we will achieve excellence. I guarantee it.
And that sounds really good to me, because obviously if you implement these plans, people are going to go to the school that they want to, and you're going to have a better educated populace, which makes for more educated voters and more educated workers. Which brings me to my next point, which you mentioned in that first little part, which is jobs. Jobs is on everybody's mind. What's the Johnson-Gray campaign? What's their focus on jobs, and what are you going to do to get the economy going back again?
Critically important. And here you can't just nibble at the edges. We need at this point to have an institutional change that will result in more jobs in our country. And that institutional change is to repeal the income tax, to get rid of the IRS, and go to a consumption tax, where at the retail level, people will, yes, spend a greater amount of money. However, when you repeal the income tax, that means that you work for a paycheck. There's going to be no federal withholding, not for taxes, not for Social Security. All of the money in your paycheck will be in your pocket. And then when it comes time to buy those tennis shoes that you're wearing or a boat or whatever you want, yes, there will be a consumption tax on that, but you'll have a lot more money to do. And what's going to happen as a result of that? And this is why it's so important. Well, first of all, of course, the economy will be spurred because everybody that's now spending all of this money on keeping records for their taxes or paying people to create their tax returns, etc., all that money will stay in their pocket before they even talk about a tax return. So that's important. Number two, today we punish people for saving money. Why? Because the government takes a bunch of it. All of that money would stay with the people. They would have encouragement to save. Same thing with regard to investing. We take a part of it. That penalty would no longer be there. People would invest more. But even more importantly, today, Kyle, our goods that we export, they're sitting here, it's a banana or it's a microchip, it's whatever it might be. Those goods, before they leave our shores, have paid taxes on them, and then they're going to compete with other goods in other countries of the world that in most cases have not paid taxes. So we have a competitive disadvantage. If you repeal the income tax here, our goods could compete much more favorably with goods around the world. Same thing is true in reverse. When we're importing goods, those goods probably have not paid taxes on them, and they're competing in our country with our goods, domestic goods, that have paid taxes, and then they all pay the same additional amount of sales tax. We would level the playing field with regard to that. Now, I was in an airplane, and I'm flying around a lot now, but I was sitting next to an executive from Nike, the shoemaker, etc. And I told him this, and he looked at me and said, well, Judge Gray, you understand that if we were to repeal the income tax, most companies in our country would again resume manufacturing in the United States. That would result in millions of jobs. Only Governor Johnson would employ this system, and Romney and Obama certainly would not. And understand that there are basically three groups of people that I can come up with that do not want this to occur. Well, the first is, of course, the tax accountants and the tax attorneys and that sort of thing. And that's understandable. They'll vote for their economic self-interest. But the second group is similar, the people that work for the IRS and the people in the bureaucracy. Okay, we can live with that. But the third group will blow you away. They're clearly the strongest and clearly the most set against this. Who might that be? The members of Congress. Because Congress today will get lots and lots of political power by voting for a tax break for a wealthy constituent. And then, of course, that translates into lots of campaign contributions. They do not want to give up that power. And by the way, if we were just to repeal the income tax, probably 60% of the lobbyists in Washington would no longer be there. It is a colossally important institutional change that will bring back prosperity and jobs to the United States of America. Don't look for Obama to do that. If he wanted to, he would have already. Don't look for Romney to do that. The Republicans would never let it happen. Governor Gary Johnson will bring this home.
So one of the main things that I really liked that you just said was about obviously getting rid of the income tax, and that brings me to the next point, which is, how do you feel about the Federal Reserve? Do you think that we need to get rid of it, or do you think that it's a necessary institution?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I think it should never have been put into effect, but we have it now, and we would reduce its intrusion into the marketplace. And basically, the Fed is doing two things. I would keep one, and Governor Johnson would keep one, and the second one we would certainly phase out promptly. The thing that I would keep is they should have a say with regard to our currency, trying to keep away from deflation, trying to keep away from inflation. That should be their task. That should be their mandate. What they have done is not only that, but now they're into trying to fix employment and trying to spur the economy and doing all of these other things. And those intrusions to the marketplace are simply inappropriate, ineffective, and in a lot of ways harmful. We will restrict those rather substantially from an evolutionary standpoint, with the understanding that, our monetary system is so critical in our country, and also the people's concern about it and their worry about whether it would be present or not. We don't want it to scare people. So that will be an evolutionary process to reduce the mandate of the Fed.
I know that you're very busy, so let me just get one more question in before we get to what people can do to help you. the last question I have for you, which is a big concern to a lot of my viewers, is the growing police state, the problem of things like street corner cameras and the TSA. Is there anything in the Johnson-Gray campaign, is there anything you guys would be doing to try and restore the freedom in this country and get rid of some of those things like the cameras and the TSA and the spying and the drones and all these different things that are kind of being put in place to watch the American people?
Kyle, Governor Johnson and I are the only ones who are running in this election who are in the mainstream. And the mainstream I define, which is the way most voters are. We are financially responsible, and we just talked about that. And we're also socially tolerant. We care about liberty. And that is not true with regard to Obama or Romney and anything near what we are. I was a lifelong Republican and left the Republican Party with the passage of the so-called Patriot Act. I could not condone any group, being in any group that would allow or facilitate this direct frontal attack on our civil liberties. Now, of course, the Congress has passed the National Defense Authorization Act, and Mr. Obama signed it. What does that mean? Anyone, you, me, even a citizen, can be detained indefinitely without charges, without a trial, and actually could be sent to another country. And guess what's going to happen there? We would be tortured if, in fact, someone in the executive decided that we are terrorists. That is simply inconsistent, not what the United States of America stands for. The TSA is the same. You know, yes, we need to be secure, but we would allow the airlines to privatize this. They would do a far better job, a less intrusive job, a less expensive job, and would be fully as safe, or maybe safer, than we are today. These sorts of things are deeply disturbing. They're now talking about drones being used by our military domestically. They're talking about police having drones to spy upon people. Well, not without a warrant. You know, if you get a warrant, that's fine. I'm security-minded as well. Most federal judges and a lot of my friends, they are, in fact, security-minded. But you have to go through and get a warrant with probable cause before any of these things are done. Now, the Patriot Act, you know, they could tap our phones. If you would call to your aunt in Italy or wherever, you could, without a warrant, be tapped by the federal government. The answer is no. Our soul of the United States of America, that which makes us different, that which makes us special, are our civil liberties and our freedoms. And our soul is under attack today by our very own government. Critically important. We are in the mainstream, and neither Mr. Obama nor Mr. Romney is.
That's the most important issue that I could possibly ask you about. Thank you so much. That's an amazing response. So what can people do to help the Johnson campaign? Where can they get involved? What can they do to make sure that you guys get into the debates?
Well, critically important. And go to our website. It's GaryJohnson2012.com. We certainly need the money, and we'll never have the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars that the Republicans and Democrats do. But by the way, and I tell people this all the time, the Republicans and Democrats are going to have lots of glitzy flyers in the mail, and they're going to be on television and radio all the time. But understand that it costs a lot of money, and a lot of wealthy contributors who have given that money will expect to be repaid once the election is over. That is not true with Governor Johnson. But when you see these things, remember there's a hook in those, and it's going to reverberate against the interests of the people. Number two, we have broken our campaign into two phases. The first phase will end at the end of September, and if we are polling at 15% or greater by that time, Governor Johnson will be a part of the 3 scheduled presidential debates. And by the way, I will be a part of the 1 scheduled vice presidential debate. Critically important, because once we're in those debates, all the rules will change. The main media will pick us up. The people will be galvanized, will be seen as the viable candidates that we are, and that we will, in effect, have a better chance of winning the election than either of the other two, because we are head and shoulders above them as far as getting appropriate, good, positive results in the United States of America. So I would ask anyone, maybe you're on the fence, but if a pollster calls you on the phone, don't hang up, for heaven's sake. Respond, I'm going to vote for Governor Gary Johnson for president. Your vote is your own, but respond to the polls. Get us in these debates. By the way, it'll make them much more interesting. We will almost require Obama and Romney to talk about issues that they simply do not want to talk about, like the Patriot Act and the NDAA and Guantanamo and all the spying and everything else, as well as our educational system. So it will be much more interesting, and besides, vote for the person that you would vote for to head your corporation, and that clearly would be the best candidate, which is Governor Johnson. So, can do that. And finally, take it personally. Take this election personally. Go onto our website, look at it, and then forward your thoughts onto your email network. Your friends, your acquaintances, your family members. Tell them, look, Governor Johnson's the right guy. Take this personally and spread it to your email list as well. We cannot be stopped if that happens. Take it personally, and we will win this election, and you will never, ever be sorry.
Absolutely, and the Media Speaks is going to be doing everything they can to help. We'll get some links to Gary Johnson 2012 up on the website, and remember, everybody, if you hear a poller, if somebody calls you, make sure you tell them you're voting Gary Johnson. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you. Good luck to us all, and it's the most exciting thing that's happened to me since the birth of my children. This is truly an exciting thing. We are the right people with the right message, the right results at the right time, and we're going to win this thing. Thanks to us all.
Thank you so much. That's Judge Jim Gray, Vice Presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party under Gary Johnson. Thank you so much for coming on.